Welcome to the Trailhead from Ultra Sign Up, where big adventures begin. Trail running is so much more than just a sport. It's a community, a culture, a way of seeing the world. On this show, we're not dissecting splits or debating shoe specs. We're here to get to the heart of it all, the people, the places, and the stories that speak to the soul of the sport. Join me, Zoe Rome, and my co-host, Brendan Leonard, as we'll bring you conversations with the everyday athletes, local legends, quirky characters, and creative minds who make trail running what it is. Messy, joyful, gritty, and deeply human. Because it's not just about chasing finish lines. It's about the friendships forged on long climbs, the lessons learned in the pain cave, and the weird, wild moments that remind us why this sport is about so much more than the miles. If you're enjoying the Trailhead, the best thing you can do is help other people find us. Follow us on Spotify and subscribe wherever you listen. That way you'll get notified when a new episode drops. And if you have 30 seconds, leave us a review. It really does make a difference. And if you know someone else who might be into this, send it their way. Word of mouth is seriously everything. While you're at it, check out 2 other shows from the Ultra Sign Up podcast network. The Buzz with Buzz Burrell for the sharp philosophical deep dives you all know and love, and Between Two Pines for chaos and comedy. Something for every corner of your ultra running brain. Thanks for tuning in. This episode is brought to you by Running Warehouse. It's 2026. You've got new goals, and at some point, you're going to need some new shoes to chase them. Running Warehouse has you covered with gear guides, honest recommendations written by real humans, and basically every shoe and piece of gear you could want for your best year yet on the trails. They're not just throwing product at you, they actually test the stuff and tell you what works and what might just be hype. Right now, they're highlighting their favorite trail running shoes of 2026. And if you're looking for a versatile trail runner, their pick is the Salomon Genesis. It's a solid do-everything shoe, whether you're logging miles on your local trails or lining up for something bigger. They've also got gear guides for apparel, shirts, shorts, sports bras, socks, so you can stop doom scrolling reviews at midnight and get out on the trails. Check out their gear guides and set yourself up for your best year yet. Head to runningwarehouse.com or use the link in our show notes.
My name is Doug Mayer. I'm the founder of Run the Alps, a part-time journalist, trail runner, and I'm in Chamonix, France. How's that?
Perfect. So one of your first, along that line of inquiry, one of your first, I believe, jobs as a journalist is you were a producer on the radio show Car Talk, which is a favorite of my youth, which I primarily understood as middle-aged men calling in to sort of do their best impression of a Kia Sorento that is under the weather and then having the guys diagnose and treat that car live on air.
Yeah, I was hoping you wouldn't bring that up because I had to go to France to try to rebuild my reputation after 25 years of Car Talk. But yeah, that was my crazy career. And I had the wonderful experience of working with 2 incredibly sweet, self-professed knuckleheads for many years, and then somehow I made the switch to trail running.
Can you tell us a little bit about that switch? How did you go from
great segue?
Yeah, how did you go from producing Car Talk to founding
like
Run the Alps? Can you connect those dots for me?
As we say at Car Talk, 3 words: witness protection program. So there, I just blew my cover, right?
Well, your name's not really Doug Mayer, so
yeah,
let's
true.
just
Vito. You can call me Vito.
Yeah.
We are Car Talk jokes coming out here. Look, I had been trail running in the Alps for quite a while, actually, through family connections. We had a beater. My aunt and uncle had a beater old chalet, not like the glitzy kind of things you see in Chamonix, but like more of like a rundown kind of very low-key place. And my brothers and I would save up our money, buy a plane ticket, and come over here and go trail running. And I'll try and keep the story short. And we were climbing and trail running. I started trail running more. And I would start this summer, I'd come over, I'd have a list of things I wanted to work through. And then actually as Car Talk started winding down, we would take a long taping break during the summer. We could work from anywhere. So I said, "Hey guys, do you mind if I work from like the Alps?" And they like, "Go for it, Mayor. You know, the farther away you are, the less work we have to do." Um, so I
I
was
would
here trail
love the
running.
pamphlet on how to warm your boss up to the idea of working remote from the Alps. If you
I'm
have
here
any
for
pro
you.
tips,
I'm a
asking for a
seasoned
friend.
I'm a seasoned pro at it. And I started trail running over here. I was over here for a couple of summers. I was posting on social media. Friends saw, what I was doing, and they said, "Hey, how can I do that?" And I started sharing information. And friends of friends said, "Hey, I heard you could tell me how to get into Sierra Zinal, run through the Berner Oberland, do this, do that." And I just started sharing info. And I was having dinner one night in a little town in Switzerland with Ricky Gates, who was then running for Solomon. And he said to me over pizza one summer evening, he said, "You ought to start a company." And anyone who knows of Ricky Gates, I sort of think of him as like the philosopher king of trail running. And he says stuff in like a really, well, first of all, he is really smart. He really is very thoughtful and considerate. And he says stuff sometimes in a like slightly cryptic way. So the idea just sort of planted in my brain. And I thought, look, I don't know anything about running a tour company, but I couldn't quite get rid of it. And one thing led to another. I tried it out. It seemed the first season people were like, "How long have you been doing this anyway?" And I was like, "Oh, we've been around a while." Uh, and a while being like 3 weeks now. But that was more than a dozen years ago. And, here I am.
Does the business actually make money now? Is that because I'm not
um,
I don't have like an MBA or anything, but I think that's a good.
we buy croissants for each other.
Okay.
Um,
Okay,
I,
that's
Huge.
w-
cool.
I would say this. Look, I mean, the honest truth is, it makes an incredible amount of money, Brandon. Look, you don't go into trail running to make money.
Well, I got into it
Um,
for the fame, for the
I
attention.
mean, I don't know.
So
Maybe it's different for you guys.
the big bucks are in journalism and content
Yeah,
creation. Let me tell you,
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
podcasting a real cash
Look,
cow.
it makes enough money. It pays its bills. We are growing really quickly, which is exciting. And we actually invest a lot of that money, frankly, in projects that we want to do. So I want to obviously talk about tour and stuff like that, but you run the Alps, this is a second career for me, right? And so it's a chance to sort of do something different, to not just be focused on to be totally honest and heartfelt, like traditional metrics of, success. Like, I don't have a need to look back in 5 years, 10 years and say, I built a $20 million a year company, go team. um, I, I'd much rather look back and say we did something really wonderful. And so we pour our money into more trips and content, and we talk about what we do is sharing and celebrating trail running in the Alps. So we have things like a film festival, we do trail running guidebooks, we do a lot of content projects, all things that probably no company in their right mind would do.
Do you have an idea
So,
how many what percentage of the clientele is like American
yeah.
versus other nation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're about 85% from the US.
Okay.
And, that's not part of some grand marketing strategy. It's because I did a lot of writing for Trail Runner magazine with Zoe
Rest
for,
in peace.
many years. And I wrote about the scene over here. And that put me in what I call my Forrest Gump position, which is like, apparently, I ended up being the guy. Or like, I'm the guy in Chamonix who knows Alps trail running because I can speak French now, and this is home, and I've done a deep dive into the scene, and it's just there's no grand strategy here. It just happened out of passion and love and joy to sound really sappy.
That
So,
sounds great.
Yeah, I feel like
That does sound
you've
nice.
like served as essentially a translator, not just in a language sense, but in a cultural sense, sort of serving as this bridge between American trail running culture and European trail running culture, of which there's increasingly intertwined as trail running grows and becomes more international. And so you've always been the guy I text when I'm over in Europe for like either a croissant or a route recommendation. And I'm curious how that's sort of, or how the growth of trail running has sort of played out in your life personally, or how you've experienced that.
so I was at the start line of what's called Glacier 3000, a trail race that goes onto a glacier, dressed like an American, as my friend, the photographer Dan Petitucci would say, wearing a tent, basically, droopy clothing, blah, blah, blah. Next to me is a guy in full-on tight pressed everything. Let's just say everything was compressed. Okay. And he looks at me sort of, I would say somewhat disdainfully, and he says, "It's not too loose." And and I looked at him, and I, as EMTs would say, glanced casually, and I said, "It's not too tight." And he said, "No, it's just perfect. You should try it sometime." And I said, "You should try it sometime. I really like it like this." That that led to an article for I Run Far about how to dress like a European trail runner, and then the flip article of how to dress like an American, which is basically, Anton Krupikno with, shorts, a water bottle in your hand, right? And
Yep.
Flowing Christ-like hair. So
Yes.
That's exactly it.
Okay. Now that I got that out of my system, things can unravel from here, right? Uh, uh, um, uh, uh, I started out here. Um, it was actually a different time. It was like more than 15 years ago now. Some of this, and there wasn't a big list of races. Everything was in German or French. um, I had to poke around to find where the races were, and I was often the only American there. And people would be like, I don't understand. You're from the U.S. How are you? How did you know about us?" And I started just getting pulled into this wonderful different world. And I did a lot of like small races, primarily in the Valais area of Switzerland, which has this really sportif thing going. It's a really sporty area. And it just grew on me. And when I wasn't racing, uh, I had roots in the mountains I really wanted to explore. And that I was just like, it's like someone gave me the best book to read ever, except that it was 1,600 pages long, and I'm a slow reader. So it was great, but I would finish the summer, like I said, every year saying, like, "Oh my God, I didn't do this, and I got 50 other things I want to do." So I ended up here. And one thing led to another. My got better. I got faster, although never very fast. Um, and I started doing longer races I never thought I would do. Um, there were many years when Sierre Zinal at 32 kilometers was the longest thing I ever thought I would do in my life. And like, who are these people spending all night out? Like, I want to be home in my bed. Um, right. And, one thing led to another. So
And now you do very long races.
now I do very long races.
That's the growth of trail running, Doug. That's, you go from 30 kilometers to Tour de Géants.
Well, yeah.
Just
Actually, maybe
upward.
just to sort of contextualize, Tour de Géants, or affectionately known as TDG, I don't know if it's specifically the like oldest 200 plus mile race, but I would say it's one of the older ones and probably the most
Yeah.
the most prestigious and competitive globally. How did you get to a place in your life where you decided you wanted to run 330 kilometers through the Aosta Valley?
What
Who
you're
hurt
saying is
you? Is what,
Yeah,
who
who
hurt
hurt
you?
you?
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
What's wrong, Doug? What's
You
wrong?
took the words out of my mouth. I'm still working.
Show me on
through
this trail map where they hurt you.
Show me on this trail. Yeah, never mind. Okay, that's a different show. It's really fun being on a podcast with you two. Can I just say this right now?
We aim to please.
Yeah, that's what
Listeners may
like
not
I said,
enjoy
we
this,
take
but
this
we have fun.
extremely seriously.
Can I?
We don't know how long we're going to be employed, Doug. It's just
That's
we're
very
just
true.
kind of.
Hey, I don't either. So
Who knows?
um, what did happen? A couple of things happened. I've obviously thought about this a lot, and the publisher always reminds me to be sure to, because I wrote a book about it.
I was going to do that.
There we go. There's the shameless plug. What happened is a couple of interesting things, actually, and some of them I only realize in retrospect. I think I was actually getting bored with the trail racing I was doing, and I was getting a little bit older, and I knew I was never going to get an elite bib to a race. And I'd done races like Sears, all, 5 or 6 or 7 times. I don't know. And I had kind of figured out what I was going to figure out. But then longer races, even I don't even sometimes think of them as a race because whatever, you're just trying to get through it all, right? Whatever happens, happens. Presented a different kind of challenge. And at the same time, I was going to Courmayeur because I had friends who were racing Tour. Joe Grant, Black Diamond Runner, and a bunch of other folks, Stephanie Case, and is even before some of her racing there. And I would watch everybody come in, and they had this look in their eyes and on their bodies. That was first of all ranges of emotions. And they had a look like, that left me wondering, like, what's going on out there? Like, this is not the look of someone finishing Western States or UTMB or any other 100-miler, which admittedly is, you're still you're often pretty heavily screwed up after that, right? Or at least exhausted in a very serious, deep way. But the people coming in from Tour had looks on their faces of like something happened out there. And I can't even quite verbalize it, except I had this feeling like I want to find out what's going on out there. It took me several years. And then, there's this whole idea of the hero's journey, which is maybe too much to talk about. I don't know. But
no, it's very important that someone mentioned Carl Jung at some point during a Trailhead recording.
Well, yeah. In the hero's journey, it's the idea there's a helper along the way who gets you started, a facilitator. And for me, that was John Anderson, this guy a wonderful guy. A lot of people probably know him. He's medical director at Broken Arrow, an incredibly modest, soft-spoken, badass ultra runner. He and his brother Andy out in Tahoe. And right at this moment, I got to know John, and John and I were having coffee, and kind of like Ricky, I guess. John said, you should do Tour. I think you'd get it. I was like, is that an insult or a compliment? But we all need someone like that sometimes in our lives, right? Shift your thinking enough so the door opens and you think like, God, do you think I could do it? Like, and then there's, I think we all go through this thing where it's like, we secretly wonder, like, I wonder if I could do that. And then you tell your best buddy, right? And be like, hey, I think I could do that. And to see their reaction. And if they laugh for a minute, okay, well, maybe I'll rethink it. But if they be like, yeah, dude, you're totally ready for that, then you talk to some other friends, and then you start looking at registrations, and the next thing you know, you put a note up on social media to hold yourself accountable, and that's kind of what happened.
So in the hero's journey, in like the Star Wars sense, that makes you Luke Skywalker and John is Yoda, then?
John is Yoda. I'm not sure I'm Luke Skywalker, but I love the idea of John as Yoda.
Tour de Géants would be Darth Vader, then.
I've always thought of myself more of as like an R2-D2 kind of person.
Yeah. So I really want to plug your book here.
Thanks.
The book is called The Last of the Giants, and It was published came out in September 2025. And
September, yeah.
it's a graphic novel, which is, I believe, a departure from most of your work as a writer. Is that correct? Is
There
this
does
your
it look like that?
first fiction?
I don't know if it's fiction or not.
That was going to be one of my questions.
Oh, okay. We'll do that later.
Yeah.
Okay. Better question then
Explain. Yeah.
how does this go from you running Tour de Géants 3 times to a book deal? Like, what was there a coffee conversation somewhere where people were like, "Oh, I think you're ready for this. I think you're ready to write a book about this."
Well, first of all, I work with this great publisher who did the UTMB book, the Race That Changed Running, and the guidebooks that we've done with Run the Alps. They're really creative over there, Helvetique over in Switzerland, but they're international. I started talking about, I wrote a lot of articles about Tour for Trail Run, a bunch of other places. I became fascinated by Tour because it's easy to become fascinated by Tour because Tour has everything. It has this mythology. It has an incredibly strong culture around it. It's crazy as an event. It's also beautiful beyond words. You get into wild places. You come into these villages where shopkeepers will literally stop a transaction and walk out onto the street and applaud you. It's just so important. Tour de Géants in the Aosta region of northern Italy. Tour is really important. It's actually something that bonds that region together. All these 30 plus little villages. And then there's this mythology of Tour of what they call meeting the dragon, which is in many ways a very real thing. And Tour is like a family. You once you do Tour, you're part of the family. You don't have to finish Tour to be part of the family. You're just being at the start line is enough to have you be part of the family because you're willing to see what the hell happens, right? And we started talking about a book, and the head of the publisher, Hadi Barkat, he said we should do this as a graphic novel, and I didn't understand that, and I totally get it now.
This just comes out of nowhere, or did you mention the dragon and that's what happened? Like,
well, he had heard all my stories.
Okay.
Hallucinations, crazy stuff that happens along the way. And I've come to understand, I mean, this, I'm not telling you anything you don't know from all of your, great art. That like, with a combination of writing and an illustration, you can play, you can have a different perspective, you can use different colors, the storyline, the timeline doesn't have to be A to B to C to D, and then this happened, and then that happened, and then I woke up, but you can bounce all over much more easily. So it really lent itself to that format. And we were really lucky to find a wonderful artist who also is basically a screenwriter. So he had those skills also.
Yeah, I was curious about that and hiring an illustrator that has that specific experience because the book struck me as being very cinematic, which would love. I'm already looking forward to the Doug Mayer inspired lifetime biopic. But I'm curious how that sense of visuals inspired the book as well. And why a graphic novel? Why try to make something like this? Why try to render it in visual form, especially as someone who's worked in radio, worked in print? Where did that idea come from?
Well, the other thing is that there's so much that's so crazy about Tour, that you experience, almost, I think everyone, hallucinates. You're in these wild settings. And one of the key things that happens during Tour or any 200 miler, I've come to understand, and I may butcher this, but I did a lot of interviews for the book, and Alex Hutchinson was incredibly helpful. I mean, of course. And he said that I think it's your prefrontal cortex, which, sort of manages our relationship with the world. that gets tired and the guard comes down. And
Mm.
so at something like tour, when that happens after a couple of days of sleep deprivation, you you experience things much more directly, much more vividly, much more intensely. Your lows are lower, your highs are higher. I mean, that was my experience. It's something like that. And and that's easier to express in art probably than me trying to, butcher my way through a paragraph to explain how I felt. So,
Can you talk a little bit about the process of well, once you knew it was going to be a graphic novel, how you actually wrote to that? Like, were you imagining scenes? Like, I know from talking to you, like Red Bull guy is a real guy. Like, that's a real person that really did that. Um, Frankie is a real person, I
hmm
believe, or heavily
yes,
influenced by a real person.
yes,
And maybe
yeah.
Sam is you. And then, like, how did that go? Did you write like 60,000 words and then like try to pull out the things that you thought would be most visually like, what was that like?
Yeah, there was a lot of back and forth with the illustrator. Because sometimes I'd write something that he couldn't illustrate or wanted to illustrate a different way, of course. Um, frankly, it was really hard getting used to
He's
that
like,
back
he's
and
like, I'm not
forth.
drawing your butt, dude.
I'm not drawing that rash, Doug.
Too
No.
autobiographical, verging on the criminal.
It's
Careful.
not what I do.
I could start giggling uncontrollably, and that could not go well for the podcast. Um, uh, Also, he speaks French, so and my French is good, but it's not, perfect. So we had some back and forths there. Um, but first of all, I like told the whole story of tour, my experience. And then I told stories of other people that I've collected over the years. And then we started talking about, all the sort of filmmaking, screenwriting ideas, right? I forget all the terminology, right? But like the subplots and the interplay between the storylines and what gets resolved where and what the key stories are going to be. And so Sam is big surprise, I guess. Sam is mostly my experience at tour, with some other elements from other people thrown in. Um, and then we wanted to really get at what was really like really dig into what happens to you in an experience like that. And for that, I did a lot of interviews. Like, Alex Hutchinson was really helpful. I interviewed um, uh, a Buddhist monk who's an expert on suffering. Um, Talked to an expert, the world's expert on pilgrimages and why someone would undertake a pilgrimage. Um, and a bunch of people like that to try to dig at different parts of the story of tour, and those are in there as well. Because I think you don't do something like that for just one reason.
Hmm.
There's maybe a bunch of forces at work, and then you learn something in the process, right? And we wanted to get at that too. Something beyond, why'd you climb the mountain because it was there kind of thing.
Yeah, one idea that, sort of comes through in the book and has been a recurrent theme in the extended Doug Mayer cinematic universe is the idea that the obstacle is the way. How does that play out over a 330-kilometer race? And what do you think how do you apply that to your life outside of the running?
Yeah, I mean, I totally believe that. Like, that is near and dear to how I approach things, I guess. Uh, Look, I think uh, the obstacle is the way. I think you you do something like tour, or I was talking to sports psychologists. This may be the best way to put it. Um, Before tour, and maybe for an article about tour, and he said to me something that I've always remembered. He said, "Don't forget when it gets really, really, really hard. Remind yourself, like." that's why you came. Like, everything up to that is prelude. So if you arrive at that moment and things are really hard, you can kind of flip that around, right? And you can say, here it is. Like, now I'm in new territory. Bring it on. Like, let's go. Instead of, oh my God, this is so blank, blank, blank and hard.
I want to speak to
So
a manager.
I want to speak to him. Who's your manager?
Yeah.
Who's my manager? I want to speak to him.
Yeah, I want to speak to my own prefrontal cortex. Why are
Yeah.
we doing this?
Yeah, but look, and one of the things I really wanted to have happen in the book is uh, I think there's a lot that all of us look. You don't have to run tour to get these lessons, right? I think a lot of these lessons are available to all of us who take on challenges that are big reaches for us. And we learn a lot about what's possible, and we fail and we learn. And I think the win is showing up at the start line. I really believe that. So uh, there's a lot. When I first raced Sierre-Zinal, the big race of one of the big races here in the Alps, right? It's at the start line thinking like, wow, basically with many of the same feelings that I had the first time I did tour, right? It was like a little bit of imposter syndrome, a little bit of like, a lot of excitement, a good dose of fear, a whole lot of questions, and then here we go, give it your best shot. Right? So, there's a lot to be learned from those sorts of experiences, right? We all know that, and a lot of people listening know that.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was thinking of while reading. Okay, the market for this is not just people who are familiar with tour. It's like kind of anybody who's had a hard time while running on dirt, which is a much larger, because there's a lot of stuff in there. It's like that lots of people have experienced. One
Yeah.
question though I had, like with the going back and forth with the artist, how did it feel when you first saw like the character Sam, who was based on you? Were you like, I don't know, he could be a little more handsome, or
A
like,
little more like maybe a little more George Clooney.
yeah, like part two to that question is like is it this one? Yeah. Like this, as we know, this person is based on a real lady, and this is, you essentially. How did those conversations go? Like, is that like, was there like, is that what you think I look like? Is that what I looked like?
I was thinking much more of Brad Pitt circa Fight Club, if we could just make a couple small, subtle tweaks to the visuals.
Like, were there, what were those conversations like, I guess?
It's a good thing. I believe in the beginning, there's that disclaimer. This is a work of fiction, any basis in reality. So we do have that. But yeah, the illustrator has his style. I mean, in some page, I prefer the cover where you can see what's presumably me running through a night sky, and you can't get a good look at my face, which is a face made for radio anyway, as we used to say. So, but did I lose the thread here? What was the question?
No, yeah.
I was curious about how conversations went when Frankie's
Frankie, as we know her, she's wonderful and understanding and incredibly sweet and very much able to let stuff go to the universe. So it was not a throwing China against the wall. Is this what you think? Is this what you think?
Is it from American Beauty? Isn't that American Beauty? I forget.
Running long races, particularly extremely long races, particularly perhaps, though I don't have specific experience here, 330-kilometer races can sometimes fall into this category of things that are really hard to describe without defaulting to complete cliche, things like describing a dream that you had, describing a hypothetical trip on psychedelics you had. And I feel like TDG fits pretty neatly into that world. So how do you try to capture, how do you try to describe that, not just as a writer, but also as someone who I mean, maybe you're not
Yeah.
like evangelist might be too strong a word, but you're definitely carrying you're
Yeah.
pretty pro, like go out and do really hard stuff.
Yeah. Well, without defaulting to a cliche, look, I think there's, I tried to hone into it from a bunch of different directions. And I think, so I did a lot of reading around the topic or things that felt similar. Like, so for like one example is the phrase, meeting the dragon. So it turns out that phrase comes from a sect of Buddhism that where people will go off and monks will go off and will meditate for like continuously for like a month at a time. And they have a crisis, which is not like the hitting the wall in a marathon crisis. In tour, you hit the wall every day, multiple days, multiple times a day. I mean, that just, this is the next level crisis and, meeting the dragon. And so I really tried to delve into it and explain what it felt like by understanding similar experiences. Like tour has a lot in common with meditating, I think, for someone who actually will try to meditate, do these like retreats where they meditate for 3 or 4 days or something. Because here's what happens. You get all the garbage out of your head in the first 6 or 10 hours or whatever. And honestly, the world falls away, and it becomes you and the trail. And you're supported along the way, as you might be at a retreat or something, people giving you meals and encouraging you. But it's fundamentally you and the trail and the mountain. And your job is really simple. Your job is to put one foot in front of the other. And so I tried to get at the experience from a bunch of different directions. The book, How to Change Your Mind, has a chapter in there about an LSD, taking acid. And I might have talked to some people who have taken acid.
It's called journalism, so it's okay and allowed.
Not,
yeah,
not when they're in
Research.
your family. I grew up with older brothers. What can I say?
Who did LSD? If we want to let's just explain the joke here.
Yeah. So the long-winded answer is that I think you can describe the experience and avoid cliches by really trying to rip apart, here's the cliche, peel apart the onion, right? To sort of get past the cliches. Maybe you write the cliches and then you realize it's a cliche and you throw it out and you dig deep. And honestly, when I was writing the book, there were times when I really felt like I was channeling the moment, and I was like just about like in tears, like so wrapped up in that moment, that experience of how the meeting the dragon moment that I had the first time I did tour, or stumbling around the call before Chamonix in a snowstorm in the middle of the night, barely awake, wondering, like, this is insanity. Like, why am I here? This is so much harder than anything I could ever possibly imagine. And that there's a stripping away process there that is very, I think, profound. And if you can find a way to get it on paper, in a way that's not cliche, I think it just takes, it's a lot of hard work, right? I mean, we're not digging coal here, right? but it takes it takes some effort to get at something that feels real, right?
Yeah, it's not actual hard work. I mean, come on.
No, it's pretty good. Doesn't pay well.
This is reflected in the way, in many of the things you wrote in the book, or how the story plays out and the things people go through in the book. But I've heard from more than one person that Tour de Géants is a life-changing experience. Like this guy he used to be in charge of the, I think he maybe still is, the American Heart Association fundraiser for the New York City Marathon. Swiss guy named Ramon. And I remember him telling me, he's like, a lot of these races change your life. Tour de Géants will change your life. I'm
No, that's absolutely,
curious,
yeah.
and I didn't ask him for details. I was like, "Oh, that's cool, man." And I should have said, "Well, like how, man? Like, what do you?" And so I'm
That's
curious,
absolutely
like,
right.
how does it change your life besides making you a person who goes back and does it 2 more times, which also but like, do you
So
have?
yeah, do you get a life change? And then if you do it the second time, you go back to normal. So you're like, oh God, I got to go do it the third time
Yeah.
to go back to being changed.
You got to end on an even number
You have to triple bluff
if you
yourself.
want
Yeah.
your life back.
I think there's an Yvonne Chouinard quote that's like, if you're an asshole and you go climb Everest with a guide, you're going to come back and still be an asshole. Like,
Yeah.
how do you, like, what changed for you that you can,
Yeah,
like, in a
well, I
concrete
think
way?
that's exactly right.
You're an asshole now. You're still an
I'm
asshole.
an asshole now.
This is disappointing news. I was hoping ultrarunning would
change my life. I was no longer afraid to be an asshole.
I keep waiting to wake up with a different and better personality, and I just must not be running far enough.
Right. Maybe if I run for 6 continuous days, something will happen. Well,
Nope.
one of the best quotes, one of the quotes in an article I wrote once, there were 2 or 3 quotes. One was from, I think, Rock Horton, who, many people know, right? A legend in U.S. trail running. He ran for many years the Kroger's aid station at Hard Rock, and a wonderful, wonderful human being. Rock and I, 2019, we ran Tour, my first time, the only time he did it. And he finished and he told me a few days later when I was doing interviews, we had started to recover. I said, well, what happened out there, Rock? And he said, I don't know. All I can really tell you is I'm not the same person who started tour. Uh, look, it's not going off to war. Let's be clear. It's an indulgence. It's an adventure that you pay for, right? And you can drop at any time. So it's not sailing around the world to discover new territories here. But if you commit to it and you really want to do it, and I think you have to have that sort of mentality if you're going to finish. Uh, you do, well, I can just speak to my experience, but also from maybe a lot of interviews, you do get to a point where you do something that will be the hardest thing that you will ever do in your life. And hardest, I mean, contrived thing. O Obviously, we all have, great personal challenges that we have to overcome in different phases of our lives, right? Um, but, Steph Case talks about this pretty well. Um, the North Face endurance athlete who's phenomenal and really smart about this stuff. She was the one who said, you hit the wall, you hit the wall 3 or 4 times a day, but in tour, you often have a real crisis. It's the self-help Buddhist sort of idea, right? Is that you're rowing across the shore, you're rowing across a lake, life goes along like that, and then you hit the shore, right? And you keep rowing because that's what you know how to do. But you're not going anywhere anymore, right? And so you have to find something new. You have to find a new tool. And tour, I was going to say confront, but I would say tour gives you that opportunity. May not feel like an opportunity at the time. For me, the first time I did tour, I came to Chamonix 2/3 of the way in. I had 100 plus maybe kilometers to go. It had been a really hard night. This night I had mentioned before, coming over a call in a snowstorm, really, really hard. And I got down to the aid station, and the person I've been running with, fast hiking to really say the truth, and jogging with, she dropped out. And I was just like, you have to let go of all of the external hopes and all of the people I want to finish in this time. I'm doing this because everybody's following me. None of that matters anymore. Like, you have to, in the book, I interviewed Chris Howe, a great coach, and sort of mindset guy, who talks about the difference between sort of, spark and drive, motivation. And like, you may have the spark to do tour, but you need something really deep to get through it. And that's when you find out, like, you strip away all of the ego stuff and you're left behind with just like seeing if you can just put one foot in front of the other and forget about everything else. And if you can do that, you can finish tour. And that's sort of meeting the dragon, and people experience it different ways. Rock Horton was in the same town, I don't know, somewhere around me, and he was wandering around town hallucinating in the middle of the night. um, I found myself with the sun coming up, walking through this village with tears coming down my face, and not even knowing what was crying. To be honest, some enough of my brain left to be a little bit embarrassed, but 98% of me didn't really care. And my whole thought was like, this too will pass. Just keep putting one foot in front of another, and it did. And so you learn these lessons, right? But I think you learn a lot about pain. There's some stuff in here from this Buddhist monk, Zuzi, who is one of the world's experts, I think, on, explaining to a Western audience how to approach pain. And she talks about pain as being like a fog, like not having any solidity to it. So if you really sound, I realize this may sound crazy, I'm sorry, but like when you get really close to it, there's really not much there. And it's really all about acknowledging it and just living with it, and not letting it distract you from the task at hand. I don't know. Does that sound like a new age nonsense?
Definitely sounds like something you might read on a tea bag, but we'll take it, Snapple cap wisdom always welcome here.
I could have just read some Tetley tea bags and not have to done the tour 3 times.
I think that's my favorite quote in the book. It's on page 148, and she says, "Because the world doesn't need faster runners. What it needs desperately are people who are awake." So I think you're saying in some way that this woke you up. Maybe.
And that's the hero's journey. I love that quote too, man. That's what it's all about, right? Like that's what tour, in one way or another, tour will awaken a little bit of your spirit and soul. And that's the hero's journey. Like the idea is to go out and, speaking of, Chenard a minute ago, I first learned the real definition of adventure from that sailing film that came out years ago, where they retraced his trip. What was
180 south, 180 degrees south. Yeah.
Right. And he talked about, an adventure is something where you really don't know the outcome. Right. Like, and so when you set off on a real adventure, to get through it, you have to build tools along the way and solve problems that you've never confronted before. And if you get through that process, you end up learning something about yourself. And in the hero's journey, that's what they call the gift. And the idea is that, we can come back with a little bit more knowledge about ourselves. And maybe that is something we can share with the world, and in some small way, help everyone out. And I don't claim to be elevated above anyone else, but like, I think we all have life challenges, right? Where a lot of these things that you learn are very applicable, right?
Yeah. Do you maybe want to record an alternate answer to that question about tour changing your life, in which you just say, "Oh yeah, I met my sweetheart."
Oh yeah.
It's the second time you did. That might be just that. Let me just tee that one up for you. That's how it changed my life.
Well, I met my sweetheart.
Yeah, screw Hinge. Just go do tour. It's way easier and more cost effective.
In the middle of tour, right after COVID, or sort of during COVID. There weren't many foreigners running it. And so I was speaking French with a lot of folks. And in tour, you can't devote any brain power to anything other than putting your one foot in front of the other. So I was finding it pretty hard speaking French and trying to, keep moving forward in tour. So I was mostly by myself. And then I hear this American voice more than a little more halfway through and tour in Donna's. And it's this incredible woman, English Knowles, and we ended up doing tour together, and we sort of got each other through the second half of tour. She was in California at the time. And yeah, we ended up dating um, for many years, and are still super close, friends. But the continental reality is something that makes, a relationship really challenging. So, I'm here, she's there, and she's become one of my closest friends in my life, to this day. So, uh, yeah, I wouldn't recommend it though if you're like looking for a date. Although
it's gotta be like top 5 like smelliest first dates, honestly. Like, most people
Top
like
5.
showered, like.
Or like
definitely.
usually waiting till the third date till someone sees you like straight up delusional, hallucinating, like on the verge of vomiting at all times. Like that's more than just like disclosure of like, by the way, I have like a dairy allergy and I struggle with like some insomnia, but like other than that, I'm pretty funny and timely.
I gotta go vomit on this bush.
Yeah.
Struggle with some insomnia, like 5 days of it.
Yeah.
I might hallucinate.
I struggle with some insomnia, and plus I have a bunch of crabs that have been following me around for the last 2 days that are totally real.
Right. And every large boulder I see, I think, is a chalet with someone serving me hot chocolate.
I keep trying to squeeze cocoa out of the rocks.
Well, as I like to point out, she, I was enamored with her because of her many wonderful qualities. She was probably enamored with me because her frontal cortex was exhausted. And therefore making very poor judgments.
If it works, it works.
Too humble.
No. Anyway, yeah. So, what else to say about tour? There's so much. I mean,
are you going to do it again? Is this going to be? Are we going to go for round 4? Like, what does the future look like? And if it sort of started as wanting to scratch that itch of wanting to sort of push the envelope, or to learn new things about yourself, sort of looking for like a new challenge, can that challenge, does it still retain a bit of like novelty for you? I mean, I don't think 330 kilometers is ever going to feel easy, but does it have the same shine that it used to for you?
Oh yeah, tour will always have shine for me because of the impact it's had for me and for the specialness of the experience. I mean, tour is very special in terms of the community. I tell people it has everything. It has this incredible route. It has wonderful volunteers in all these little villages. And it just instantly forms this great community. It's very special. It's a very special event. I've done it 3 times now, and you do. I think I did it to learn stuff about myself, and in that way, sort of a selfish endeavor. All these things, in some ways, are right. And I think after the 3rd time, I had a strong tour, went well. I felt like I've kind of got 80% of this figured out, and now maybe it's time for something else. So this August, I'm headed off on PTL, UTMB's 300 plus kilometer challenge, which I would say on the metrics is similar to Tour, but PTL is very, very different in that it's much more technical. So you're bringing Via Ferrata gear, you're following a GPX track,
This is one of those things where I start to wonder if you're wearing a helmet, are you still running? If you have headgear on, is it still running?
Yeah, helmet required at PTL. And so that has my attention now, right? So I'm really curious about where that goes. I'm really excited for it. And I started it last year with two friends from Run the Alps, but I started it with a really bad stomach bug that was going around Chamonix. So we got about 80K in, and then Paul wasn't one of our partners wasn't feeling well, and I was not feeling well, and you can't be starting something like that thinking like, well, I wonder how this will go.
Yeah. Maybe things will loosen up, warm up.
Yeah.
By day 3.
You have to start with a feeling of like, I'm coming back here. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm coming back,
Where can people buy the book, Doug? Last of the Giants.
You can buy the book everywhere books are sold, online, everywhere in the U.S., at all the usual places. And it's just fully distributed in the U.S., bookshop.org, Amazon, all those places. It's also available in French for those of you who would like to practice your French. On peut acheter le livre en français. But in the U.S. and English-speaking countries, it's available online and in bookstores. Yeah.
If someone is an ultra runner and they have friends or family in their life that don't understand why they run ultra marathons, do you think like Last of the Giants is a good tool to maybe help them explain themselves to those friends and family members?
Yeah, that's a great reason to buy the book. I mean, at least it's a start.
I'm moonlighting for Helvetique now, so I should make sure I said that.
What's the commission here? I forget.
Yeah, it's 12%, which I pushed for 15, but that was it. Yeah.
I think I think it might not be a bad idea. Because before the first time I did tour, I was trying to explain it to my brother Andy, who obviously has followed many stupid adventures over many, many years for me. And he's like, I don't get it. Like, why do you do this? Like, why are you doing this? And how do you train for it? And then I stumbled and stuttered my way through an answer. And then he said, oh, wait, I get it. You've been training for this your whole life. And that's sort of the other piece of tour. And maybe one way to explain these things is that who doesn't like to bring all your expertise to the table, right? And have a moment, whether it's teaching or research or writing or ultra running, and tour, and probably, and other 200 milers are like that, right? It's a moment. I think of it as the PhD of ultra running. It's a moment because one thing's for sure, stuff's going to happen out there, and you don't know what it is, and so your job is to be resilient and to figure out solutions as you go, and to cope in the world's biggest way. And so it's like getting your PhD in trail running, which and who doesn't want to get their PhD? Well, I don't know.
I feel like I'm very happy in, I guess, whatever pre-K I'm bouncing around in. I'm very content to continue to read graphic novels about the 200+ mile distance.
But it is great to bring everything to the table, right? And have to use it all, right? I mean, there's some satisfaction in that, I think, somewhere for all of us.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for chatting with us today, Doug. It's been really cool to pick your brain about all things running, fictional and otherwise.
Thanks. It was really great to visit with you too. I had very high hopes and expectations because it's you two, and it was all that and more.
Thanks, dude.
Looking for a late May race that's equal parts stunning and suffery? The Salt Lake Foothills Trail races are back on Saturday, May 30th, with 4 distances to choose from: 10K, half marathon, 50K, and brand new for 2026, a 50-miler with 10,000 feet of gain. Wowza. The race description literally says both awful and amazing, and honestly, I respect the honesty. The courses are point-to-point through the Wasatch foothills with sweeping views of the mountains and city below. There's a $3,000 prize purse for the 50K and half, plus podiums at every distance, and yes, every finisher gets to experience the Michael Bolton final mile. When you see his face, you run like hell. 1 mile of MB magic to carry you to the finish. We cannot stress enough that this is real. Military, veterans, and first responders, as well as teachers, all get a discount. Just bring proof to bid pickup. Registration closes May 24th. Sign up now at ultrasignup.com. Thanks for joining us on the Trailhead. If you love this episode, leave us a review. Share it with your trail crew and make sure to subscribe so you never miss an adventure. Give us a follow on Instagram at TrailheadPod. And you can reach us anytime at trailhead@ultrasignup.com. We'd love to hear your stories, questions, guest ideas, or just to say hi. And don't forget to check out all of the shows in the Ultra Podcast Network. We're building something special, and it's just for you. We'll see you every other week, right here on the Trailhead.